There we go. So console going first, because console's higher seed. Now, we got some interesting decks here. Console is playing a blue-white boggles, or sorry, blue-red eggs deck. Gargamel is playing a green-red Valakut through the breach deck. Primeval Titan. You know, if the eggs deck is more out of left field. Basically, if anyone remembers eggs from a few years ago in Modern, it was a deck that could go off really quickly, very powerfully. It used a lot of artifacts that could sacrifice itself for mana. Sorry. And it could sacrifice themselves to get mana to draw cards, and then you use cards that return them all into play. Now, because they banned Second Sunrise because it was the most powerful effect, and the deck was too consistent, too quick. Now they've now people have adapted. Now they're playing Faith Renewed and Empty the Vault to sacrifice a bunch of artifacts and then put them back into play, and continue to draw cards, continue to get mana. It also works with Cart Clan Ironworks, which can sacrifice an artifact to get mana. So the deck can generate a ton of mana, draw a bunch of cards, and eventually you're gonna kill them with a Banefire or an Emrakul you'll cast. The deck's very interesting. We also see that it takes advantage of the Tron lands because it doesn't need colored mana really. It's mainly an artifact deck. It has white, and I think it has some blue cards or something. Now, Gremlin's deck, on the other hand, the red-green Through the Breach Valakut deck. This is a ramp deck. It ramps into lands, so it can play Primeval Titan, and Primeval Titan can grab more lands in Valakut, deal damage that way. It can also cast Through the Breach, Emrakul, or Summoner Trap. Yeah, there we go. That's the card. Summoner Trap into Primeval Titan or Emrakul. So both decks that are doing their own thing, not very interactive with each other. We'll see, who has the quicker clock. I honestly can't say who has the quicker clock because I don't really know how quick the eggs deck is. Usually Gremlin wants to go maybe a turn 4, turn 5, Primeval Titan. Maybe a turn 4 Through the Breach into Emrakul. That could be pretty good also if that resolves. There we go. See more artifacts being played. All these artifacts, when they come into play, they draw a card, basically. Sphere, you can sacrifice it to add a colorless mana, and then you draw a card. So basically, the main card of the deck is Cart Clan Ironworks. It's a 4-mana artifact, and you can sacrifice an artifact to add 2 colorless mana. There we go. Through the Breach Emrakul, like I said. A new Emrakul from Modern Masters 2015. Not looking fancy. So an Emrakul coming through. It's going to deal 15 and annihilate 6. Funny enough, it's okay that these artifacts go to the graveyard, because Empty the Vaults can get them back. And he also draws 2 cards when the Ichor Wellsprings leave the battlefield. If I was going to say, Cart Clan Ironworks, you sacrifice an artifact and you get 2 colorless mana. So that Emrakul is going to do a lot, putting Console to 5, also, stifling the development, making him destroy 2 lands and all the artifacts he had in play. There's an Ethereum Sculptor. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less, so there you go. Ichor Wellspring costs 1 mana to play. Cycles, drawing a card. Basically, the deck wants to hit the critical mass where it can, play enough artifacts that are cheap, if not free, and generate enough mana so that it can cast its big spells. This match is currently in Game 1. This is the second semifinals. There's a Summoner Trap now, hitting Primeval Titan. Now, Primeval Titan's going to find mounds and Valakuts. It could find 2 mountains or a Valakut and a mountain. Either way, it would be dealing lethal damage to the face. Valakut, if it's in the battlefield and you put a mountain into the battlefield when you already control 5 or more lands, then it deals 3 damage to the player. So there you go. 2 mountains coming down, so 2 Valakut triggers, dealing 6 to Console. Console's dead there. So this game we saw a really quick start. Turn 4 Through the Breach, turn 5 Summoning Trap, paying in prime time. Console is just dead. So maybe this eggs deck is a little too slow, or maybe that draw from Console was a bit too quick. I'm not too sure exactly. Like I said, I haven't played against the eggs deck too much since it got banned the first time around. The lists that people are playing now are more fringe. Yeah, Emrakul is gas, has been said. It's an accurate statement. So Console's on the play the first time, but that didn't seem to do enough there. I feel like Console maybe might have been one turn away from going off. Depends what his hand was. There's a wastes. Let's see. There's a Conjurer's Bauble. You know, Conjure Bauble, sacrifice, put one card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library, and then you draw a card. Basically, you just want cheap artifacts that can cycle, which means like you can play it and then you can do something with it to draw a card. So it would sacrifice itself, but it replaces itself by drawing a card, because you just want to go through your deck, you want to see as many cards as possible, and then if you use Faith Renewed or Empty the Vaults, they bring back all the artifacts, so you get to draw again, in which case you're netting cards. There we go, an Ichor Wellspring, another one that when it enters the battlefield you draw a card, and when it leaves the battlefield, or when it goes to the graveyard, you draw a card. So right away it draws you a card, and then if it gets sacrificed to Card Clan Ironworks, it draws you another card. Or if you sacrifice it to Emrakul, like what happened last game. There's a Relic of Progenitus. That's actually really good. Excuse me. The reason why Relic is good is because Console's deck revolves around putting all the artifacts in the graveyard and then getting them back for value. Relic of Progenitus can exile target card from a graveyard, or you can pay 1 mana, exile Relic, and exile all cards from all graveyards. So this Relic's gonna need to be dealt with before the artifacts go to the graveyard, or else, you know, in response to an Empty the Vaults or in response to a Faith Renewed, Gargamel would just sacrifice the Relic, exile everything, and then nothing would get returned. So that's something that Console's gonna have to deal with. The Console putting a fair amount of artifacts in play right now. Turn 3. All these artifacts are very cheap because of the Sculptor. Aethersworn Flask. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and you can sacrifice it. And then you can choose a basic land type, and then your lands become that type. So basically, it's an artifact that draws you a card when it comes into play, and you can sacrifice it. You know, that's the main thing between these decks. Is that they're cheap artifacts that draw you a card. The fact that they can sacrifice themselves is also helpful if you don't have Card Clan Ironworks in play. But the more important factor right now is this Relic Progenitus. You know, Gargamel's gonna have some time to develop his board, get lands, play Emrakuls, or no, play Emrakuls. Probably not hard casting, but you know, through Summoner Trap or through the Breach. Or if Prime Time comes down, it's not too long until the Prime Time gets enough Valakuts and Mounds in play that it can deal lethal damage. So we see an artifact being sacked there. Conjurer's Bauble coming down to return the artifact, but the Conjurer's Bauble itself gets exiled. There's Card Clan Ironworks. Sacrifice an artifact, add 2 colors to your mana pool. That's one of the engines that can make a ton of mana. But the thing is, Relic of Progenitus is really stopping Console from going off, because losing all the artifacts would be pretty bad here. One thing Console could try to do is sack a few artifacts, try and go for a Faith Renewed, Relic gets exiled, and then after that Console can try and redevelop and go off again with the Relic gone. So we'll have to see what happens there with that. As long as Gargamel leaves up 1 mana, Relic's gonna be a big issue. So Ichor being sacrificed to draw a card here. Like I said, maybe a few artifacts are getting sacrificed. Prism, draw a card. Maybe Console's gonna try and fight through this relic. Prism could make 2 white. Nope, there's blue mana being made. Sculptor's coming down. Maybe not. Maybe this... He's not going off, but just... No, looks like he's sacrificing. Let's see. Sacrificing... Draws a card, makes some mana. Prism can cycle the mana to make it colored mana. Usually blue or white is what you want to make it. There's red, though. Is this a Banefire? Is Banefire lethal? How much? This is 8, 9, 10... Is this a lethal Banefire? Maybe he doesn't even need to generate enough... He doesn't need to get the artifacts back from his graveyard. Maybe just one, you know, cycle of this is enough to generate enough mana to Banefire for lethal. Or is this a hardcast Emrakul? That's another possibility. Emrakul... You only need 15 mana for Emrakul, which is actually less mana intensive than Banefire. So this is 11 mana right now. This is 13, this is 15 mana. This is 17, this is exactly 16? Is this Banefire for... I don't know, maybe I miscounted, but I think this is only Banefire for 16. Banefire for 16. Can't be countered. So that's... I mean, Gargamel's at 17, but Banefire for 16 is pretty huge. Relic's coming down is going to exile everything in play. Gremlin's gonna go to 1, so Gremlin can't take any more damage off shock lands or fetch lands, anything like that. I don't know if Console has some way to finish the game off, but maybe Console miscounted? Or maybe Console just felt that, you know, Banefire for 16 was pretty good. There's a Through the Breach Primetime. Primetime can get mountains. There's 2 mounts coming through. With double Valakut in play, that's 4 triggers, that's 12 damage. I think this is a lethal counterattack. 12 damage from this, then when Primetime attacks again, it gets to search for 2 more lands, and then the 6 damage from the Primetime itself. I think this is lethal. Wow, so Console only able to Banefire for 16, 1 short of lethal, 1 mana short. That's crazy. Wow, Gremlin's gonna win the match. That was so close, that game. 1 more artifact for Console. The 1 more 1 mana artifact would have been... Actually, no, any of them artifacts. They all were too cheaper because of the constructs. But Gremlin's gonna win the match. Some powerful draws. Gremlin's deck is called, I think most people call it like red-green Through the Breach Primetime, or Through the Breach